started doing photography because it was the easiest way to create what I wanted to create. I went to art school and I actually failed pottery because it took me 3 weeks to throw a pot and do the glaze and wait for everything to dry. And by that point, I had forgotten why I started the pot to begin with. And so I had the same problem with oil paints and with everything else. So I finally decided, okay, well, I can throw all this stuff together. I can come up with a concept, get the props, gather it together. I can shoot it, light it, whatever, move on to the next thing. I could just keep on moving that way. And that's the brutal, truthful answer to that question. The gratification of being able to create things that quickly was very important to my teenage self. But now I find myself at the ripe old age of over 40 of going, well, you know what? In order to make this shot work the way we want to, we need to have about a week and a half of prep period. We need to build some props. We need to go source out some materials. We need to go find the right person to be the subject for this piece. And what should be a 60th of a second and done really ends up being, a 2-week process to get it to where it needs to be. So I've kind of come full circle in an odd way. So all throughout, I've always been asked, what do you do? Are you a photographer? Are you an artist? Are you whatever? And I go through these periods where, no, I'm a photographer. I'm a diehard photographer. I have my cameras. I have my toys, my gear, my formulas and all the scientific stuff. But the other side of it, especially when I'm doing this kind of thing, is that it's very personal and very much about, for lack of a better term, it's about art. It's about a concept. I'm now at a point in this cycle where I'm looking back at things and I'm saying to myself, I'm not a photographer. I use a camera as my tool, but it's only one of a myriad of different tools that I use in terms of lighting, in terms of post-production, in terms of pre-production, in terms of everything that is feeding to one central concept, the execution of that concept. So I look at this as, for myself, it's art, it's finding a solution to a visual question in my head. Okay, so technology, which is ubiquitous in our world right now, and if an artist is not at least cognizant of it, then they're missing something hugely. But when someone comes up to me, I got in massive trouble last year actually with Glenn Williams over at BNN because he asked me, so what kind of camera do you use? And a few days before I was reading a Jock Sturges quote, one of his books, and he said, I am so uninterested in that question because that is a tool question. It is not a concept question. It's not an art question. It's about being a part of the toolbox. I think that anyone who's not, as an artist, is not exploring all the different tools they have open to them is vastly missing something. It is becoming so narrow in their scope that their art isn't going to grow. On the other hand, to walk up to somebody and say, what kind of camera are you using to get these shots? The camera doesn't get these shots. The camera doesn't get any shots. I don't care if it's my mom's point and shoot or it's the Hasselblad that I've been drooling over for 5 years and I probably may get someday, but the camera doesn't do it. I do it. You do it. They do it with their minds. And that's where it all starts. If you're not starting at the basics there, then you're missing something. So Sweet Shrapnel, the series behind me here, started actually, my day job is to do corporate and advertising photography. So I read all kinds of different magazines looking for the latest trends, inspirations, what have you. And I was flipping through Loeser's archive, and on one page it's a book of advertising from around the world, basically. And on one page was a very beautiful lemon for some dishwashing detergent or something like that. It was kind of an interesting little ad. Flip, 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 flip. There's a PSA about landmines and hand grenades. So there's a gorgeous picture of a hand grenade, if you can use those two words together. And flip, 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 flip. About 7 or 8 pages later, the lemon and the grenade top melded in my head. And the series was born out of that, but I didn't know why. All I knew was I was driven to create these things at that time. And I knew there was something in that message, something about the two pieces together, something about the slickness of the advertisement that really struck a note. And it wasn't until, it always seems like things happen weeks later, but it wasn't until a few weeks later that I started thinking about the piece again, and people had been talking to me about cloning, and they've been talking about genetics, and they've been talking about green energy and coal energy, and this is better and this is worse, and this is nuclear energy should be the next thing, or what's the reverse of that, fission energy, or whatever it is. Do a lot of reading in my life. But all these different things kind of started coalescing, and I started realizing as I'm watching my 10-year-old and my 13-year-old playing in the backyard and watching the cars go by out front, realizing this is my apprehension of the hand of man and what we're doing in nature. It's not negative because it's a tool. It's not positive because there's just so much potential, one way or the other, to go to good, to go to bad, or what happens when we're doing something with the best intentions, like introducing a certain predator into our world, the new world, that ends up going wild because there's no natural predators for it. I mean, it's that kind of the thought process that led to the hand of man in nature. So I am well, let's go back to the labels. I am a commercial photographer who feels a driving need to create. I do images for a wide variety of different clients, from biotech to theater groups. We just recently did something for Fiddlehead Theater for their production of Ragtime, which was a wonderful performance. If you are curious about my work, you certainly can go to Suzanne's site and see the more concept-based work. If you're interested in talking more about corporate projects or advertising projects, you can go to mckeephotography.com, M-C-K-E-E photography.com, all one word. Or if you're interested in something a little bit more advertising oriented, Matt McKee, M-A-T-T-M-C-K-E-E photo.com. There are lots of shows coming up. I'm really looking forward to meeting lots of new people and getting out in the world and showing off what we can do.